So what you gon' do, when your pocket's low and empty, waiting on your stimmy and the bank ain't got no sympathy, look, money, ministry. Tell me, is you feeling me? Collectors ain't no friend to me, yo. Pastor Hines, take his time, show you definition and the truth behind the grind. Bet you wish you managed it better. Stormy days is over, homie. God got the answers. Ay, look, money, ministry. Ay,
team in your life. I just feel somewhat. My wife told me that hat matched my outfit, but I got a problem with a hat on in the building. So that being said, I want to go back to building a team in your life. God have called you to become kings and princesses, to be leaders in your life. He told Abraham, kings shall come out of you. In other words, people who lead. And so you have to build a team, and one of the puzzles of the team is my insurance guy. This is Dale Roberts from State Farm. Let's give him a hand.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Now, I've started off with many insurance guys, but I've ended up with what I consider the best, the guy who will walk through and explain and make sure you understand what you signed up for. And Dale has did a tremendous job with educating me on insurance, from annuities to term to universal to whole life. We're going to spend a good portion of our time with acting like Dale have come in our home and trying to sell me a product and what he needs or what do we need. Everybody needs a different. And then we're going to open up for you to ask questions. What do you ask Dale some questions from his presentation of dialogue between me and Sister Hines? As many of you know, we almost lost our daughter Monday in a serious car accident. And it's amazing to me, something Brother Johnson said to me, Pastor Hines, it's by law, it's mandated us to have car insurance and almost twisting your arm to have house insurance if you borrow money to purchase a house. But it's not mandated that you have life insurance and you know you're going to die. I mean, just think about that. Something that might happen, a car accident or a house fire, you got to have insurance. But life insurance that you gonna die is not mandated. And as a pastor who have for 35 years assisted families personally and with the church finance to bury the dead, I think it's about time that we put something in place to make it your responsibility. As I said earlier in the class, GoFundMe is not a life policy. Somebody said GoFundMe is not a life policy. Yes, and I'm by no means trying to hinder people from helping people, but it's just some things we ought to start putting in place to take care of our own responsibility. Amen. Somebody say amen. There are two scriptures that they're both found in Proverbs 27:12 and 22:3, and it says, "A wise man sees trouble and prepares, but a fool sees it and just proceedeth on." Believe it or not, you don't want tragedy to happen in your home, but you don't always drive your children and you don't always be with them to say who car you can and cannot get in. To us, our children are one of our most prized investments. They rank second on the totem pole to me and her. And we've insured each other to keep life going on without a dire need. I say to you that are listening virtually, stay tuned and be prayerful about what you had. Get your pen and your paper. And you that are present, get your pen and paper and take notes. And there's no question that should not be answered. Okay, so we're going to start this dialogue with Dale. You knock on my door. Did I knock on your door?
You got it.
Dale and myself sit on a board together, and that's how we became friends. And I says, Dale, when I found out what he done, I explained some things to me, and he began to explain things that I could comprehend. And I said, Dale, I want you to take over my policies and to help me with some more policies. We're making a decision. Dale sent some information to me about 3 weeks ago. I had asked him about Universal Life Index, and we went over some scenarios and situations, and our children are grown, and they said, well, forward it to us and we'll choose what we want, and we'll consult with you all to see if that's what we should get. And so we're going to back up and go all the way back to Joseph and Elise is in high school, and Sister Hines is working. She's one of the major players in the Hines financial future. She is the health, the eye, dental, and the major breadwinner in our family. And so it was vital that I would protect my interest in her when she get out and go towards the prison to go to work. Now, a lot of things can happen at a prison. The convicts has guns. That's the warden. No, I'm just joking. To me, it was a dangerous situation. And so I said, well, you have a possibility of might losing your life going to work. And you are a 6-digit person, and I need that type of income so I can keep moving on if something happened to you. I was a 5-digit income breadwinner, and our lifestyle had culminated in that it took both of our incomes to keep what we was doing. If one of us lose our income, it's going to be a very disappointing journey. Many of us have all started to live to the max of what we make. Watch what I say. If you look at when you was in your 20s, how many of you bought your house when you was in your 30s? Okay. Anybody bought their house in their 40s? Okay. And so how many of you have lived in your homes more than 10 years? So that being said, a decision you made when you was much younger, you're living with now. But it apparently you're still at the max of, and this is the majority of people, of the income. Usually everybody get a cost of living or an increase or a promotion year or 2 years later. But we all find ourselves still struggling with not enough. And so I say to you is, that's because you're not really looking at what I call the big picture. I've had this revelation with my son and daughter and my wife. If you have direction in your life, you will not have many distractions. Write this down. Financially, if you give your money direction, it will not be distracted by other things. You won't lend your money, you won't waste your money if you're focused on what you're going to do with your money. But if you just focus on paying your car note and house note, the rest, bulk of your money is going to be distracted by, well, I'm going to the mall and I need a pair of shoes and you got 10 in the closet. I need a new outfit and you got 2 closets full of clothes. Because you don't have any direction about how you want to live according to Psalms 90 and 12. Lord, teach me to number my days. And so there's a season in our life that we're going, hey, let's have a party now. Let's celebrate the 40 years we've been working. And so you'll see a different lifestyle in me from I'm not riding in a truck no more. I gave it away. Well, there's a different season in my life that says I'm going to enjoy the fruit of my labor. And so you see me in my little red Corvette. Well, I'm going to have to change up that because my back don't like it. I should have started driving it at 50 and not 60. That being said, Joseph and Elise in high school. As a pastor, I've gone to too many car accidents where seniors and freshmen in college has been killed from car accident. And so the first thing I says to myself, I got to get insurance on these kids before the accident happened. And so I said to Lantine, let's get some life policies on Joseph and Elise. Lisa's in the 10th grade, she's driving, and Joseph is a senior in high school and he's driving, and we have cars registered in their names, and this is going to be a problem if they're driving and not paying attention. And everybody just don't go from their house to the school and back home. Somehow they take the friend home, or they stop at the mall, or they get on the highway and go to Kalamazoo without your permission. And so we bought life policies, but Dale, well, it was the other agent that really helped me to get what we call 15 paid. 15 paid was a very new wonder to me. What does that mean? You pay 15 years and you never pay again. The policies I'm used to being sold was whole life and universal life, and you just keep paying and you just keep paying and you just keep paying. I was really excited because I'm 12 years in on Joseph and Elise 15 paid, and it's just 3 years later that I'm end up paying about $145 a month. It's billing a cash value, and they have a death benefit of $50,000. But then Dale really blessed me with some more knowledge. He says, did you get riders on your insurance? And I'm going, what are riders? He says, those give you option based on the day you open the policy. I had somehow, by the Holy Spirit, blessed me to sign up riders on my kids. Every anniversary, Lise or Joseph can buy another $50,000 policy based on their age and health when they signed up. Joseph was 18, Lise was 16. So they don't have to go take a physical. And many of you know, as we heard the testimony of last session, a young lady got cancer when she was 35. Now, my basically out of the window because it costs so much. And it blessed me because Dale had shared with me he had cancer and he couldn't get insurance, and he sells it. And I was like, wow, what a testimony. So it's vital that you would get insurance and ask for riders. It costs something like what I call pennies, not even a day, a penny a week. I think I just bought up a lease 4 weeks ago at an anniversary that says, give her another $50,000 death benefit. So now Lise is covered for $100,000. And unbeknownst to me, Lise had a serious car accident 3 weeks later, and everybody at the scene said she should have been dead. The doctors even said to us jokingly, tell her go play the lottery. I mean, that's how bad it was. And so that's being said, yes, Sister Hines, put your mic on, baby.
They have control over it. Thank you. Okay, so just two things that I wanted to share as I was listening to Pastor speak. He talked about the 15 paid and how now we're 12 years in on Joseph. So for those of you who have children, time moves quickly for everybody. And so the point I'm making is, it may seem like it's a long way away, but it's worth doing it, because at some point, if the Lord allows us to live, you're going to reach that date, because we're already 12 years in on Joe. So that's just another 3 years. So you want to take advantage now to move toward whatever the length of time is for you to meet that goal. And the second thing is, Pastor is saying, rider, our ID. Okay, so not right, you know, I just want to make sure they understand what you're saying, rider. So it's just like something that rides along with the main thing, if you could just think of it that way, right?
Good advertisement. Good advertisement.
And finally, for those of you who don't know, if you don't go to Lilly, pretty much probably, Elise did have a serious car accident. It was a one-vehicle accident, and a tree limb fell on her car as she was driving. So this is one of those just out of the ordinary types of things that happen. I mean, when you think, because initially when we got the call, my thought was, oh, I hope the person in the other car is okay as well. Well, as Pastor was talking to either Elisa's friend or Joseph, trying to understand what had occurred, that's when we got the clarification that no, it was a one vehicle accident, a tree. You know, our immediate mindset was not that a tree had fallen on our daughter's car. So I'm saying that to say insurance is that type of vehicle. You don't know what's going to happen, but strange things can happen.
You want to say something? I see it in you there.
Strange things can happen. So we thank God that our daughter is well. And still with us, you know, she's still dealing with the whole, praise the Lord, yes, we are thankful. And thank all of you for praying for her. And yes, we're still dealing with that fallout, but I was just trying to emphasize that what Pastor's trying to share with you is that insurance is a plan. You don't want it to happen, but it might. So cover yourselves.
Okay. Ring, ring, Dale. Dale, man, I need some insurance. Dale, explain to me, what's the difference between whole life, universal life, and term? Those are the three big insurance policies everybody tries to sell us.
Do you mind if I use your
Yes, I brought that in just for you. That costs $39, so take your time right.
You got it. I'm going to stand up. My name is Dale Robert. I have the State Farm Agency. I'm actually located in Napoleon. As Pastor Hines said, we met on a board. I volunteer on several boards in town. Just a little bit about me first. I actually have been with State Farm for 32 years. I was a trainer for State Farm for the first 10, which I loved that job. And to be honest with you, I would rather be a trainer than what I do now even. But I trained agents and their employees from downriver all the way to Monroe. So Detroit, downriver, that whole territory was mine. And then after a while, I was training agents to be agents, and I decided to be one myself, and I took over an agency in 2000. So I've been an agent for 22 years now. So, and with that, not that this is a commercial, but you know, I also do, State Farm did securities, so I have securities license and investment license, and I, on the side, taking my State Farm hat off, and he knows this, I've always had interest in this. I wish I taught this. I volunteer teach at high schools, homeschool groups, on finance and insurance, and that's kind of how we started brainstorming together. So with that said, I'll just kind of break insurance down real quick. As I nodded, you know, the thing about any insurance, it's all you're doing is transferring. It's called, you're transferring risk. We all have risk in our life. I drove here. My wife stopped me with a whole bunch of questions, so I went from being way early to now I'm running late. So I'm racing here, and the risk of me having an accident and getting here is just like you. I have a risk, you have risks. That's the whole point of insurance. Rather than me worrying about it, I transfer that risk by having insurance on my car and myself and things like that. And that's exactly what insurance is. And I know this is a big part on life insurance, but the transfer of risk of life insurance, keep in mind that risk is always there. Their daughter, it wasn't a baby tree branch. So you should look at the pictures. You sent me that picture. I used to be an auto claim rep with State Farm, and I've seen some pretty serious claims, including many deaths. And you're right, she was very blessed to get through that accident. It didn't hit the hood of the car, the back of the car. It went right through the windshield, just like you would envision. And sadly enough, we had just talked about writing life insurance for her literally days before that. True. I mean, you went out of town 3 or 4 days prior. So with life insurance, one thing I'm going to say before I start talking about it is life insurance, car insurance, you can walk in my office and I can hand you a proof of insurance right now. House insurance, if your house is eligible, I can write you insurance right now. Life insurance doesn't work like that. All companies, you're saying, hey, I want to give you so much money in exchange for when I die, I'm going to get 50,000, 100,000, whatever that number is. They are going to send it to their actuary underwriting department to decide if you're eligible to be, written or not. He's right. I sold life insurance. I taught about it. I was 26. I'm 55 now. Went to the doctor for a cholesterol check, and I had thyroid cancer. I went from eligible to ineligible like that, instantly. So being in insurance, I thought, what's the heck? What's the harm? So every year, no, I don't know if I told you this, for years I filled out an application, send it in, saw if they would take me or not. They would deny me, give me my money back, and I did it again the next year. And I probably was 15 years to 20 years past the time I had it when they finally said sure. But something I'll talk about life insurance, so the two things you're up against is every year you get older, you may not be eligible tomorrow when you think you are super healthy today. And the second thing is every year you get older, it's more expensive. There's kids in the back table. The life insurance we're going to talk about is super cheap for them, but it's not as cheap for me. And by the time they said, hey, we'll take you, I had to now revisit it myself because if I could see if I could afford it, because I wasn't 26 anymore when they were starting to talk about. So the delay of waiting is always more expensive. So I'm going to just really hit on some basics on life insurance, and you stop me because I love talking and you need to cut me off. So you can't understand. I know Pastor Hines keeps referring to universal life, which is fine, and whole life, which is fine, but you can't really understand those without truly understanding term. So term insurance is exactly what it says. You're buying a protection for a certain time period. You can buy 1 year term, so the policy, if I sold a 1 year term policy, it's for a term, a time period. If I were to do a graph and show you the price of it, usually these policies, and many companies don't sell this anymore, and we don't even sell this anymore, but you have to understand this to understand the concept of term. So a 1 year term policy, the rate is the same. If it was a $50,000 policy, for example, the rate would be the same for 1 year, and then it would go up because I got older.
While he talking, I'm going to show you how I think. So when he sells me term, I say to myself, get term because it's can cover or lease or lend team because I bought it when we was 25 and 26, the age I started pastoring this church, 50 cents basically a day at the most. 35 cents a day would hold 50 grand. And I would say I'm gonna buy a 20-year policy. I'm saying that because I also have a $500,000 policy with him on my children that costs me something like 37 cents a day. So if Lise would have got killed, Joseph would have received a check from State Farm for $500,000. But that's a term policy that I says I want it for 30 years because it's going to take me 30 years to build $500,000. The only reason I buy term is to say I'm going to work diligently in my other investments to get that. I'm insuring my money so when the term runs out, I have the $500,000. I'm saying to my kids, go to work, get jobs, put money. You have cost me and your mother $500,000, and we're going to insure you until you get that $500,000 back to us. Do you understand? This is when I'm instructing the church, the new pastor. As soon as he comes, get $1 million policy on him. Call him young, and it'll be cheap. But do like the health insurance. Give him a physical before you hire him. That's a joke, but you know what your insurance. Don't bring no guy with high cholesterol, right, overweight. You're going to have him about 10 years. You need him for 30. I want to say that. Keep drawing.
So most people, just to take a step away from this, I'm very visual learner. That's how I've always learned. That's why I'm drawn, and that's how I teach. So that makes it simple. One thing I will say is if I asked anybody in here what's life insurance, everybody would say, I die, my wife or whoever gets money. Yeah, that's true. But he gave an example earlier. When they first got married, they both were working and dependent on each other's income. But what if she's not working? My wife taught when we first got married, same story. I needed her income, she needed my income. Later on, we had kids where, I mean, you know how this game works. Daycare costs more than she was making, so she ended up staying home. So why do I need life insurance on her? She needs it on me because it's my income. That's an easy conversation. But why do I need it on her? I need it on her because I still got 3 kids and I'm going to hire a daycare person to watch my kids or I'm going to lose my job, right? So I may not need her income, but I need money to offset the loss. Then we ended up homeschooling, is what, my wife was a teacher. We ended up homeschooling, different conversation. Now my kids are in junior high, high school, almost graduated. Do I really need somebody to daycare them? No, but for years they've been homeschooling. I also don't want to yank them out. God forbid she passes. I don't want to now stop the program. Just so you know, even though I say homeschooling, it was a program. She's going to a place, so I still got to get them there. It's a school, so, and that's not cheap. So it's all that moving my life ahead. That still costs money. Yeah, the funeral costs and all that, and that's the thing that most people think about. But life insurance does a whole lot of things that you don't quite know. It can generate wealth. It can protect. It's protecting loss of future income, loss of income. It gets as complicated if Pastor Hines and I owned an ice cream store together, and he owns half, I own half. I can get life insurance on him, he gets life insurance on me, so God forbid
You die.
I die. He doesn't want to be in business with my wife, right? And I love you. Maybe I do want to be in business with her, but I don't know. You know what I mean? So instantly, his half goes to his wife, and now I'm in business with somebody I haven't even talked to much. So it's called a buy-sell. Life insurance does that. So it can become as complicated or as simple as you want to make it. This is a simple conversation first, just so you know this. I drew this as you were talking. Nobody told me this. I just read a lot, and I picked this up. And I don't know how accurate this is, but my personal idea of somebody's need for life insurance is a baby. A lot of people would argue kids don't need life insurance. But I'm going to tell you, when I had kids, God forbid anything happened to them. But had they happened, I didn't have the money to pay for funerals. So I'd have had to take a loan, and I don't even want to go down that path, right? So yeah, I personally think, am I talking too loud?
No.
I personally think the need is very little, but there is a little bit of a need for even kids. That's my opinion. I also think it's important as not only the need to have a little bit, but that need to throw those riders on to guarantee their future income. God forbid they get cancer like I did, out of the blue. Different conversation, but that's another reason. As kids get older, get married, got 3 kids, have a mortgage, have cars, their need for life insurance becomes much higher. They get older, house paid off, cars paid off, kids moved out of the house. I don't know what the magic age is, but let's say, my house is paid off, I don't have any people dependent on my income. Do I really need $800,000 anymore? Maybe, maybe not, depending if I want to pass generational wealth or something. That's a different conversation. But most people, they really just don't want to be a burden upon their passing. So it kind of goes down to a low number again. So there's only, when I talk about this in a second, there's only the policies that can lock in a rate forever are those whole life policies, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So I usually tell people to buy a small whole life policy that lasts your whole life to cover these numbers, and a term policy, and I'm talking a lot of term, whatever that magic number for you is, to get through this hump. A 30-year policy, 20-year policy rides through that. Some sales guys, and you'll very quickly know how I am, and that's how I think we become friends, is they'll try to sell you one ginormous whole life to do that. And if you can afford that, do it, because it'll generate a lot of money. But it costs a lot of money. Let's just call it what it is. It's expensive. But you can have multiple policies, just like you could go open 2 checking accounts.
Let me make this transparent for you all. This is Joseph and Elise and Teen and James, whole life, 50,000 whole life policy for the rest of their life. Here's Joseph and Elise, $500,000 when they've been in that policy 10 years, so Joseph would have been 20 and it's covered for 30 years. And I'm giving you 30 years to make $500,000. And that's what I says, all it takes you to do, son, is to invest $5,000 in your company and get your company to match you. And so you're putting away $7,500 a year. And in 30 years, you'll have $500,000 and this term policy will go away. You see, I'm using insurance to transfer the risk. Hey, Joseph, I want you to have $500,000 when you're 50. That was my thing. And at least if he get killed, you're going to get the $500,000. And if you get killed, he going to get the $500,000. But it's up to you all to work a 30-year window and $500,000 when this term goes away. And by the way, funeral homes are just getting expensive and expensive. When we was children, our parents bought $2,500 and $1,500 life policies, and when they died at 70, the insurance people told us we owe them $8,000 more. How many of you remember getting your parents, and they basically sold our grandparents and parents accidental insurance? Y'all know the difference, right? You have to die in an accident to get it. My thing is, when he drew this bell curve, I saw quickly what I didn't really know what I was constructing. I started Joseph and Lise at the age, I think Lise was 16 and Joe was 18. And then I bought this policy when Lise was 18 and Joseph was 20 to cover this 30-year gap where you're gonna need more insurance in your 20s through your 50s, because those are your crucial working years. I'm trying to convince my children you don't have to work past 50 if you stay with direction and focus. And that's what I'm trying to get into you. Many of us just work as long as, I used to push my wife, you don't have to work 30 years. You can save your money quickly at 20 and quit at 40. Somebody just told you at your job, work a job till you 30 and get a pension. You can create your own pension. That's all they doing, taking your money and saving it and then feeding it back to you monthly at a time. And you don't have the discipline in your own life that says I can save my own money and send it out to me. You can create your own pension fund. That's all. A pension isn't doing nothing but going to an insurance company, buying index funds, and says, send Glorice and Zeta a check every month. And when they die, we keep the rest of the money. And Glorice and Zeta could have created their own pension by buying their own policies and saying, when we die, give the bulk of the money to our children. You could keep having checks going to your children and grandchildren if you learn to create your own pot of money. I don't want to get off that.
No. That's good. That's right. So there's no questions on this, right? That kind of makes sense. There's not a whole lot to that.
Just keep a mic on.
Not really a question, but an observation.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we've ever really thought about having multiple policies to achieve a goal, if you will.
Right.
And so to me, that is one of the things that we're trying to encourage in this environment, a paradigm shift. Oh, I don't just have to have whole life or term or universal. Okay, wait a minute. I need to figure out what I need, and it's okay for me to, do shopping. Like, for instance, if we go to Meijer or something, and I know I want fruit, but I also need some meat, and I also
Buy
need some
separate.
milk. So I think that's a new concept in the way that insurance is presented to most of us.
Yeah.
While he was talking, I was thinking about you that says, well, I'm past covering. You can encourage them for your grandchildren that are getting married. Hey, I'm going to give you $30 a month and you get your life policy. That'll be my wedding gift to you. And so I'm out of $330 a year. And by the way, I got a CD through an iBond that creates me $600 or $900 a year that can pay for your gift, and I can keep my $10,000, and I'm just paying you the interest off of a bond. I'm giving you a thought pattern of how to, so you don't have to use your pension or your earned income. You can use the interest of your money. I don't pay for these policies out of my Lily Missionary Baptist Church income. I pay for it out of investments of 30 years of working and saving. I go, okay, I make about $6,000 a year in interest, and so I'm going to use the interest to cover all of these policies. Because Dale be looking at me like, Reverend, you know, you're paying a lot of money here to this company. And
I'm being nice, and I'm like, you know how much this is going to cost, right? I'm the sales guy, and I'm pulling him down to.
But he don't know. I'm spending my interest that I know if I die, it can steady get
Right.
paid for. And like I tell my kids, everybody got a time window, age 50. And if we can get me some red markers so my red can stop.
No, you're good. You're good. Well,
No, I was speaking to the young lady there. She's going to help me for the
got
second
it.
half.
So, one thing, before I go into this, the one thing I will piggyback up on her. Now, keep in mind, like I said before, I had cancer. I honestly don't remember what year I became first eligible. And maybe if I was first started with the company when I was younger, I would have bought one giant policy if I could have afforded it. But some of this wasn't my fault because I was ineligible. But just to tell you what I personally have a literally whole life policy, the one my parents got me when I was younger. They did not add the rider on it. So it is as low as I think it's 25 grand. Woohoo! I couldn't bump that up. And speaking of that 25 grand really quick, you were just talking about funeral costs. There's policies in my book of business that I acquired from the agent before me that are written back in the 60s and 50s that are $1,000 death benefit policies. One.
But now think about...
Because that would have been, that'll bury me now back in the 50s. But if they're not revisiting this again, and this isn't something you do once and just never come back and look at it again. I feel for them handing them a check for $1,000 because their car insurance is $1,000. I mean, I didn't even do anything for their funeral, but that's another conversation.
That's $2.74 a day saved. Becomes $1,010.
And I
They
don't-
done paid that 60 years.
for whole life, for their whole life. So anyway, that's a different conversation. But for me, I have a little whole life, and when I became eligible, now I have 3 kids, all that story I told you. So I bought, and I did it because I'm not making tons of money either. I was trying to figure out something that makes affordable to me. So I wrote a 10-year term, a 20-year term, and a 30-year term, and my whole life. That's just me, knowing that every 10 years I get older, my death benefit's going to go down. 10 years later, hopefully my kids move out. Sorry, I love them to death. I'm joking, totally joking. I want them to stay with me. But they grow up and they get married and move on, so they're not pulling on my income, I guess you'd say. So my death benefit goes down because I don't need it as high. 10 years later, if everything falls in, that's the 30 years. My mortgage will be paid off, so I don't maybe need that extra. So it's stair steps. Mine stair steps. I'm 55. I'm 4 years away from my first drop, and it's going to drop. I know that. I don't want to be 90 with $1 million of life insurance. A lot of people do, but I personally, had I started earlier, maybe I'd have a different view of that. But I
Let
had
me
to start
jump
later.
in when he said something. The Leontine picture comes in. I have a policy with him on Leontine called Return of Premium. It's a $100,000 policy, and what it says, whatever I paid in, it's what is called a 20-year return of premium. If Leontine lives 20 years, they have to pay me back all of the money I paid in the policy. If she die, I get a check for $100,000. So Leontine is 10 years in. I covered her from 50 to 70. So if Leontine lives to be 70, he's gonna send me a check, I'm gonna sign it, and it says, do whatever you want to. Here's approximately $30,000 I paid to cover you for 20 years. But you made it. But if you don't make it, I'm gonna take the $100,000 check and go get you something to make yourself feel happy.
And I don't, the stagger that I have, that I said, those weren't available back when I did it, so I don't have that. But boy, it would be a life changer of every time it dropped. I get, well, equivalent of 30 to 40 to 50 grand back in a single check. And FYI, that's a tax-free check because it's a return of premium. It's not an investment, so that's why it doesn't get into the investment interest stuff. Is this tax-free returning back your premium that you paid? So if you don't mind, I'm gonna do this because it'll confuse them if I don't, and it'll make, when he's popping into return of premium and stuff like that whole life, it'll make a lot more sense if you see this real quick. Is that okay?
Yep.
Might spin this up. All right, so any term policy, and every company has fancy names for them, but in the end, look at the big phrase of the name and it'll say term at the end of it. So a term, they all work the same. So a 1-year term policy, the rate walks up every year. It's like a stair step, right? So all I was gonna draw is stairs. Rate goes up, locks in for 1 year, and it goes up. No company sells this. But if you truly understand a 1-year term policy, and if I sold you it, and assuming it actuarially assumes a person passes away at age 100, just to tell you, a $25,000 1-year term policy, how much would the annual premium be at age 100 since it's actuarially assuming you're dying? The premium is equal to the death benefit. The premium is $25,000 a year because the policy assumes you pass. So a term policy, the rate walks itself up, ding, 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 every year. So if you understood what I just said with regard to the death benefit matches your age at the actuarial assumption of when you die, used to be 100, but now they moved it to like 120. But let's say it's at 100. If you understand that, the older you are, term insurance is expensive. Or term insurance just isn't even being able to be sold to you, just to tell you that. I have a computer, I type in your age, and it tells me what policies you're even eligible to buy, just so you know that. So this is 1-year term, 1 year, and all companies sell different term cycles. 5-year term, walk up 5 years. 10-year term, walk up 10 years. We have a 10-year, a 20-year, and a 30-year. They don't technically walk up, but they are designed to end after that 10th, 20th, or 30th year. Completely go away, okay? Because if it jacked up and went another 30 years, usually that last year is actuarial past age 100 if you're following this. So that's why it has to end, because it can't go that far. So you can get term for anything, any time periods. So why would I buy a 5-year term? Well, again, that's when you take a step back and say, why do you want this? Well, I just took out a loan on a car and I paid 50 grand, and I really, if I die, I don't want that to be a burden on any of my family members. So I just want a 50 grand policy for 5 years to cover the 5-year loan. Maybe that's the situation. Or my kids are going to be in my house for 20 years probably from now, so a 20-year might be good. Or I just did a home loan and it's a 30-year mortgage, maybe 30 years are good. Just whatever that magic time. So that's term insurance. There's no cash value buildup, meaning it doesn't build any money. Cash value is cash. No buildup of cash at all. After the 10-year, 20-year, 5-year, 10-year time period ends, You wave at them when you leave, they wave at you back. That's all you get. There is no money. So that's a term, and forgive me, I'm going to, not to confuse what he said about a return of premium, some companies like us just started selling a policy that is a term, but they give you your money back at the end of the term. So I know you're going, wait a minute, Dale, that's cash value. Well, it's not cash value. They're just giving your money back. But something they're not telling you is it usually costs 2 to 3 times what it would have cost if I sold you a straight term. The reason is they're just taking your money and investing it and using the interest to run the policy, if that makes any magic sense. You're not getting your investment back. You're just getting your premium back. It's not a bad thing, but it's a great policy. So it is a return of premium is a still return of premium. It's still a term policy, right? Then there's policies on the street called whole life. Whole life does build cash value, builds money, and costs much more expensive than the term policy because it's building value over time, and it's designed that a premium would be needed for your whole life. Now, there's a couple factors to be aware of. The policy does usually pay dividends and cash values. It just builds value without getting too deep into it. But there's going to be, usually with all of those whole life, if you buy them early enough, like the young guys in the back, they do get to a point that they start to churn enough money that it's making more money than you're paying. And that's called a premium offset date. I won't get into that. But the fact is even though it's designed to pay for your whole life, there are ways that you could be older and it's kind of becomes a money tree and it's kind of paying itself. So whole life. Have any of you heard of, right? See, I've read all his stuff too. I like him, but I can take his whole section on insurance and I just read it and I smile because he's not an insurance guy. But if you read it and you followed him, he hates whole life. Hates it. Only likes term. And I go, fine, because most people I talk to still don't have term, right? Go get your term and then argue that you don't like. They don't get that part. The one thing that he doesn't mention, and I always bring him up when I teach because he's a big, people follow him and I think he's a great guy. I have every book he has at my house. But he doesn't talk about people like me. What happens when you're 26 years old and you get cancer and you can't get insurance? I can't go buy term insurance, so your book at that section doesn't apply to me. It fits in a perfect world, in a perfect situation. So anytime you read those finance books, the more I learned, the more just read them and then make your own opinion. That's my opinion.
This is the piece I want to add. Whole life.
It's a great policy.
I have it on my children as a 15 paid. I don't keep, most people have whole life and they just keep paying their whole life. I bought a 15 paid and I'm 12 years in. I only have 3 years left. It has a cash value around about $8,000 built in it. Joseph and Lise will always have a $50,000 policy with a cash value in it. After 3 years, I'll never have to pay again. And so, but they have what we call riders that Lise can go and apply for another $50,000 every anniversary. That means the month and the date that she signed up, they give her an option. I think it's every...
It happens, for our company, it happens 11 times. About every 3 or 4 years, goes to age 49.
So she get 3 years. For 11 years, she could have added another $550,000 without taking blood or passing some health physical. She can be on her deathbed with cancer. And her anniversary will come by and she can go, sign me up for.
The key is you got to be healthy when you add the rider, obviously.
It don't make a difference if you get sick down the road. And
then you
so
can add it, yeah.
I'm an advocate for a whole life because of that 15 paid. I'm done with it, and it's there.
That's the downside with the term. Yes, it's cheap.
But it's over when it's over.
It's over when it's over, and now I'm 30, and I wake up to the fact that 30 years later or 20 years later, and I wake up to the fact that, man, this policy is about to end. I need some more. Well, guess what? I told you life insurance gets more expensive when you're older, so now you're 20 or 30 years older, so it's not going to be cheaper as you were, and you may not qualify. So, so that's the thing.
This is over for Elise at 48. This is over with Joseph when he's turned 50, because I have a term policy on them, and it was for 30 years, and I bought it when Joseph was 20 and Elise was 18. So they have 30 years to be covered. This goes away. I came back and bought a 15 paid, and this is for their whole life. They can be 80 years old. They can go get their cash value anytime. And I tell all of you parents, your children don't need to know everything you do for them. God taught me a lesson one time. I had a beautiful gold chain. Cost me $3,500. I bought it at the age of 45. I always wanted it. And my son was a senior in high school, and he looked at it. I said, oh, you wear it. He went to a basketball game. A week later, I said, Joe, where's my necklace? He go, I took it off and left it in Grand Ledge locker room. And you know what God told me? You can't get mad at him. I waited till you 45. You turn around and act like a fool and gave it to him at 17. You better understand what your children can and cannot handle. Now that's just a little revelation. My policies and cash values, my kids didn't know until they got in their late 20s. And at the end of the next session, I'll share with you what me and Dale was talking about just before I went on vacation and came back, and Lise was in a car accident.
And Pastor, might I add, I think if we would remember how Dale started his presentation, that we're transferring risk. Because when we're talking about term life, at some point the term does come to an end. But it's what you are doing to assist with your peace of mind while you are going through certain seasons in your life. And let me just say it again. A tree fell on our daughter's car while she was driving. Who would think that that would occur? So things occur. And I'll share something with you when, from a personal standpoint. When I was still working in human resources, of course, as part of your compensation package, you would get health insurance, and you could purchase long-term disability insurance. Well, people would come in, and they would be very young when they started their careers, most of them, and would say things like, well, I don't need long-term disability. And we can't force you to sign up for long-term disability. But I did ask my staff, do the best you can to encourage people to accept it. But we would hear all kinds of excuses. Oh, I'm way too young for that. Oh, nothing ever happens to me. Well, boom, you get in a motorcycle accident. Oh, can I buy it now? No, sir, I'm sorry. No, ma'am, it's too late. Well, what am I going to do now? Well, I don't know what you're going to do to replace that income while you recover. So it's just that piece of transferring risk. It's a risk. We don't know what's going to happen. But it's nice to have that confidence that if something does occur, I've already set something in place such that my life is not disrupted any more than it will be from the incident. Right?
I'm going to interrupt Dale here. We're going to let Dale catch his second win, and we're going to delve back in. So you done covered two types of insurance. Somebody tell me one of them out here. Term. Somebody else? Whole life. What's the difference in term? She explained it that both. I was coming back on y'all.
Based on the same rate. That's what I was going to draw. The same rate you started with the day you started.
Draw that up there.
So I don't know how old. I keep picking on you guys at the back. You're the young ones in here. if you're 20, I don't know how old you are, 17, if you wrote a whole life, when you're my age at 55, the policy will be still billing based on when you were 17 years old. That is what's the beauty of the whole life, and why you do it early, is the rate never changes through your whole life. These, I showed you, the rate's going to change. Whole life, you lock it in when you're young, and that's the beauty of those, is you're never going to be as young as you are today, and you know that. That's a silly thing to say, but, you know, early on, I was like, man, I just can't afford it. And now I'm sitting here at 55 going, I wish I had realized I can't afford not to have it, to be totally honest, because now I regret not buying it at 17.
That's why you need elders in your life, or Presbyterians, as the Bible talks about, church leaders that would, okay, I didn't cover it and I got through it. I'm picking on Glory's and Serena mother. Thank you. All I know is Serena mother, okay? All right, Zeta. You're going to cover your grandkids or your great-grandkids, or you're going to help your children help take care, and you're going to change the landscape of your family lineage. That's what I'm doing as a pastor. For this whole county, I'm taping it so pastors who couldn't make it, they didn't, Pastor, I can't make it, well, go view the tape. Steal what you need. Bring this guy to your church. I'm ordaining him. Ordaining him.
I thought he was going to high-five me.
No, this is the guy that says, Pastor Hines, don't buy that.
Yeah.
No, everybody else just wants your money. Dale wants you to be successful. Dale speaks to me like, this is what I would do.
This is what I do. This is not what I would do. This is what I do. I wouldn't, and you'll know how I am. There's a lot of, I would never sell you something that wouldn't make sense. I just am not that guy.
But I'm just telling you, 100 guys that tell you that line, but the Spirit revealed that to me about him. Before he even got there, I've heard everybody act like they for you. They for your money. This guy's for you.
All right.
I would not bring anybody in here. See, I understand who God made me.
Okay.
Like I told him, as my wife, we was at a game, and we was trying to sit away from kids, and we kept sliding down, the kids kept sliding down. We kept sliding, and my wife looked at you the magnet. And I'm like, man, I just want to watch the game in peace, but no, that's who God made me. A woman walked from the bottom up and says, Pastor Hines, I heard your voice. And I'm going, everybody's hollering. And I'm going, okay, you better understand how God made you. You influence people. And I really want you to prosper as your soul prosper. I'm not trying to give this to the heathens. I'm trying to give this to the believers. I'm trying to change the dynamics that one grandparent, one father can force their children to be financially stable. And when he talks about whole life staying the price, staying the pace.
Good. That's good.
And I trick my children. No, you gonna pay her or you gonna pay him. But I'm giving you a time frame of working years. Your mother sat the podium. She quit at 56. I don't want nobody in my house to work past 50. We done enough hard work. Follow your passion. See, you all been trained, poor people need to work all their life and everybody needs to earn it. And then you look at the queen and go, praise God for her life. And she's a monarch and wealth is just transferred to them. You look at the Kennedys and you don't look down on their kids just traveling around the world. They living off trust funds. But you should live in homes that you don't build. You should be a land that flows with milk and honey. And these things are the resource. They're not the source. See, when God showed me Dale, he said, Dale is not your source. He's just your resource. I'm your source,
That's
Reverend.
Right. That's right.
I'm going to bless you through Dale.
Oh, God. Thank the Lord.
Listen, we sit on a board together with one of the multimillionaires foundation, and when I look at him, I said to the guy, I said, about 20 years ago, I said, what you do for a living? He said, oh, I just pass out money. I said, that's what I want to do. And over the years, we built a relationship, and I says, did you graduate from college? He said, no. I said, how'd you make your money? He said, my father died and had a life policy. You know him as Hearst Foundation. Their wealth came from a policy. Talk about it never changes.
Yeah, before you do lunch, let me just finish this, and it'll make more sense with this, because you're not going to understand the next page if you don't kind of understand this. But this is just a summary of these. That's all I was going to draw. And again, term insurance, really quick, it's stair steps. You qualify, stays for a term, could be 1 year, 2 years, 5. We didn't saying that over and over, and the rate goes up, walks up. And usually it'll just have a stop point. Or back in the day, they did sell 1 year term. It would just keep going, but I have never, not that I've been an agent for too long, 22 years, I've never seen somebody keep a 1 year term until if they're long livers, they've never kept it long enough for it to pay off because it becomes so expensive, they let it go. Which I would let it go too, it's just too expensive. But forget that. Term policies walk up. A whole life policy, same death benefit, might cost 2 times, 3 times what a term policy is because it builds value. So see it as a death benefit, and I can't say the word investment because it's illegal to start going down thinking of it like investment, but it's building a cash value within paying dividends within the policy. But the rate is about 2 to 3 times more, but the key is the rate never changes through your whole life, stays the same, and it's written based on the age you are, 17 or whatever your age you are. If I wrote one today at 55, it never changes until I'm 50, based on that age. So the rate never changes. So if you look at my little chart, yes, term insurance is cheaper in the beginning years, but as you get older, if you had written a whole life earlier, whole life will become cheaper than the term, assuming you wrote those earlier. So
keep talking. I'm getting the spirit.
The beauty of them locking in the rate is the magic of the whole life. They do build value. Yes, everybody in single in this room, if I showed you rates, the older you are, whole life is expensive. I just will tell you that. But it's the one thing that it locks in a rate. And he's talking death benefits, kind of high, low, all over the place. But everybody in here would have a different need for different amounts. And that's something, it's called a life needs analysis, and it's a whole different conversation. And it's just trying to point out, okay, what would you like your life death benefit to do? And you might want to donate it all to the church. You may want to donate it all to one sibling. I want it to go to my wife and my kids, but maybe when I'm 80, do I need it to, I'm praying my investments will be big enough that I don't need to be leaving it to my wife. So maybe then I will just change it to my kids.
And the Little Missionary Baptist Church.
Or I loved his necklace thought, because I didn't have anything when I started either. I've lived in more states than probably anybody in this room, and we didn't have a whole lot of money. The fact is, I love my kids to death, but I don't know if I would hinder them or hurt them if I handed them $100,000 right now. Do you know what I mean? Because maybe they are too young to be holding a necklace.
Grand Ledge was.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, I might give them $100,000 that I worked blood, sweat, and tears to get hold of, and in a year they're driving some car, and there goes the $100,000, and I'm like, what? You know, there was a lot of Tylenol headaches to get that $100,000. I don't know, I love you, but that's just crazy. I don't know which way. We could sit and have a long talk of if that right or wrong. But, you know, it's funny, we talk about the Hearst Foundation. We're giving away somebody's money that technically he didn't earn it, but I'm blessed to be on that foundation. It's fun. That's how we got to meet each other. And, I mean, he could have bought a Corvette, and he didn't, so at least he's giving it away. I mean, that's my argument to it. He could have done a whole lot with it. So anyway, I'm done.
Okay,
I do want, let's take Sister Hines.
I had a question. So you talked about whole life, and I know it was just basic summary, but you talked about there are some whole life policies where you can build a cash value and you can
Let me just say, all of them build a cash value, whole life. But before he turned, God told me to write this down. Term is a season. Now those Christian words, it's your season. Term is just a season. Whole life is for life, to help internalize it to ourselves. Whole life builds a value, but this is what I do when they pay the dividend. My kids' whole life dividend, they want to send you a check. I said, no, don't send me the check. My kids don't need it, I don't need it. We go and buy more life insurance. So what I started off with a $50,000 whole life policy is about at $62,000 because of the dividend they pay. I buy back more life insurance. And I don't want to confuse you. I just wanted to show you with some options. So the policy that I started at 50 is at about 60. To me, I'm calling keeping up with the cost of inflation because I don't want them to go to Hines and Hines Funeral Home 40 years from the day and they says to bury your mother is $75,000. You won't believe how the cost of inflation is eating at the power of your dollar. And so I balance it off by saying, just pay back and buy more life insurance. I'm really counting on my grandkids. And the second half, I'm going to call the kids, and you have a pamphlet with 3 options Joseph and Lisa ought to choose 2, called Protect Your Money. And they've already told me to tell them what they're going to choose. And like I told them, give me your account numbers. Money's coming out of your account. And these are the 2 options, and we'll explain later. But I finish your thought, baby.
Thanks, honey. I just wanted to point out, I did hear you say that anything that you get back from, however you get it back, the premium or whatever else, all of that is tax-free because it's not considered income?
Well, let me back up because I'm going to answer your dividend cash value question on your whole life. But to answer that question, so
That's
I know you can't see this, but the term policy, the return of premium,
Yes.
since that money is exactly what it is called, return of the money you gave us already, a premium. There's no investment built up. Yes, I told you how that's.
You already paid tax on the money.
It's a return of premium. That money is received tax-free because it's a return of your already get paid premium. So there's no investment to it. If it was earning interest and they're giving you back interest, I'm sure you would have taxes on it.
Okay.
Now, but that's not whole life.
That's term.
That's term. So the whole life, what I didn't say, and I'm going to say this because it's going to be wrong if I don't. So all whole lives, again, companies have different names for all of them, but just look at the title and they'll say at the very end whole life, or even State Farm has a policy called an executive protector, and if I got the policy, the very top line, it'll say this is a whole life policy. So all whole life policies, most all, I can't speak for every company, pays dividend. Dividend is a return of premium. Okay? So our dividend goes back into the policy. You can make it accumulate. You can have it do different things, and I'm not going to get into that because that'll be confusing. But most people will have it accumulate, and technically it's accumulating. I told you I can't say investment, but technically that pot of money is a savings account. It's earning an interest rate, and you'll get a 1099 for the interest that earns. So yeah, you'll pay tax on that. It also builds cash value. You can only loan against the cash value. You can't withdraw it because the cash value is the gasoline in the engine that's keeping that policy running, if that makes any sense. To get the cash value, since that's the gasoline in the engine, if I'm 40 years old and I decide I'm going to buy a house and I need all the money, I'm going to take out all the cash value, that's like siphoning all the gas out of my car. No more life insurance, policy cancels. Just
And
so
then
you know that.
Uncle Sam gonna make you pay taxes on all that money you borrow.
You'll pay tax on the gain. What they do is they'll look at the policy to see over all the years how much money have you paid and how much money you're going to get back. And if there's a gain there, you'll get a 1099 for the gain. If there's no gain, there is no we call it a taxable event, but you'll get a statement at that point. But it's on the gain of the cash value. So the dividends you can take out, cash value you can borrow against, because that's the gas running the engine. The thing is, I have even asked questions, but I'm going to say one thing because I told you I read and I books, and he's popular, so I always bring him up. Why does he hate whole life? If it really builds cash value and it pays dividends, why does he have chapter upon chapter about don't buy whole life? And I read those because I'm like, I've told you, and you guys don't know me, this is how I am. I'm not going to sell something that doesn't make sense, that I can't wrap my head around. So I wanted to make myself feel better, and I started looking into that. The reason is, not to confuse this, but if I bought a $50,000 death benefit, and the dividends dividends, cash value, right? Dividends may or not be paid. They're calculated each year by insurance companies based on how many, I don't even know if this is right, based on actuarial deaths that year. I've never seen my company not pay a dividend, and quite frankly, I've never heard of a company not doing it if they say they're going to do it. But if you got a quote, you'll see it's under the non-guaranteed column, because maybe if there's a war here and a whole bunch of people pass, they may actually not pay a dividend one year. But I'm just telling you, I'm rambling. Cash value is the engine and the gas running it. So what you don't know, and what some people hate about whole life, because you have to understand this before we go to lunch and have universal life, is when you die, if your policy has built up 25 grand, and I'm using whole numbers, of cash value, when you die, do I get 75,000 death benefit or 50?
50.
50. Why? What happened to my cash value? It's my money. What happened to it is, back in the first day they wrote the policy, the formula that the calculator is calculating the rate on, since I'm 30 years older and it's built 25 grand of cash value, it is not having to pay for $50,000 of death benefit. It's paying for the difference of those two numbers. So when I'm older, it's only having to offset and pay for what it would cost for another 25. Follow that kind of? So if you see that now, there's 75,000 of, there's 40,000 of cash value. So really, the pull on my premium only really has to generate $10,000, but if I die, I still get 50. Following this? If I want to take it out cash,
the most you're going to get is 50,000, regardless of this number and that number.
Not yet. Kind of. Maybe. So if you follow in this, it's only having to pay for the difference of the 10, correct? If I decide I'm older, I want to take the money and run, a cash value is really called cash surrender value. Surrender means canceling the policy. Take 40 grand, cash surrender it, close the policy, give you back 40. I go to buy a puppy or something. So now,
What is this, 55?
let's pretend it turned to 60,000 of cash value.
I got you.
Now, that number has exceeded this, so now I would, 60 minus the 50,000, there's 10,000 extra, 10,000 extra, I would get 60 grand of cash value, of death benefit if I died. Once the cash value crosses the death benefit, then you'll see on illustrations your death benefit starts to skyrocket. Now, you have to be old when this happens, but I'm just telling you how this works. So Dave Ramsey would go, it's wrong to sit here and talk about cash value when I got to cancel the policy to get it. Well, yes, that's true. However, and I don't get my cash value back. But the thing is if this thing worked the other way and you did get your cash value back, this policy would cost so much money that you wouldn't be able to afford it because it's calculating what it would cost for $50,000 every single year. But that's the beauty of what it's doing, is it's getting offset by the cash value as it grows. But then when it crosses itself, you're getting the death benefit and the difference. Does that make sense what I just did?
He's gone in Calc 2, and we want to stay in Calc 1.
I know, but I just wanted to understand, because I was a big one of why does he not like this? Because I think it's sweet.
You know what the Spirit says?
Shush.
He that speaketh in an unknown term, there must be an interpreter.
Don't look at this.
That's what my job is, to make sure I'm clarifying to you. Remember, and we won't say, we'll just say another financial instructor teaching.
Yeah.
What I do want to say is,
that.
insurance is not an investment.
Okay.
It's a protection. And so you're not buying insurance for an investment. Go and buy stocks and bonds for investments.
Right.
That was the first part of the class.
Exactly.
This is protecting your money.
All right.
So most people, I hate to hear insurance people always stressing this pot of money. I tell people, that's just like you hoping somebody to die. I don't never want to use my life policies. I did in her case, so that's why I call it a return of premium. I want her, when she turns 70, we're going to get a check about $29,000, and y'all will go, where they at? Well, they probably made it to Hawaii and now going to Egypt. That's what we're going to do with her return of premium. See, what I do know by looking at this congregation, I've seen people in their 90s. God have blessed me to pastor people in their 90s, their 80s, their 70s, their 60s, their 50s, all the way down to their teens. And what I discover, at different ages or different season in their life, people don't do what they thought they was going to do when they was 20 years younger. And so I'm telling you is, you've got to start taking your survey. How many of you when you were 20 thought you was going, when you was able to do it, you going to do everything you can, and when you got able to do it, you was too old to even think about doing it?
My degree's in biology, if it tells you anything. I never in a million years thought I'd be doing insurance. But I can tell you a whole bunch of, I fell this way and fell that way, and suddenly I'm in insurance.
So
totally accident. I have a biology and chemistry degree is what I have.
Always look both sides of the coin. My situation might be different, that I'm only buying term. And your situation might be you buy, there's a big movement going across the country, and I'm putting on brakes to all of you. They're convincing everybody to get their 401k plans and buy index universal life. And I tell folk, one tire don't fit all cars.
The most important thing about this is I can make this as complicated or as basic as you want it, and it doesn't need to be basic, complicated, sorry. You don't need to know the ins and outs of this. The amount of coverage you want or need is going to be different than what you want or need, and that's the difference. I don't need to know the ins and outs of all this little stuff. You just know to know just enough to understand what's available to you. That's really it. And all the policies, there's 3: term, whole life, universal. That is it. There are no more. They put all their fancy names on them. They all work very similar, but it's not complicated.
And that's what I want to. All of you can identify with JoJo and Lily. And so I'm trying to be transparent of what the Hines. We have all three of the policies. The third policy will be discussed after lunch.